cost Raymond Beckworth his $3 billion defense empire. I know because I'm the one who made the call that brought it all down. The Bourbon hit my dress blues at 13:47 hours on a Tuesday afternoon in downtown Chicago. I remember the exact time because checking my watch is something you do when you're a Marine. 24 years in the Corps teaches you to timestamp everything, especially when someone's about to make the biggest mistake of their professional life. My name is Marshall Thornfield. Most people call me Mac. I'm 49 years old, and I run Thornfield Defense Solutions. At that moment, standing in that conference center with premium bourbon soaking through my uniform, I was the only person in the room who could authorize $875 million to move from my company's accounts to theirs. Not $1 had transferred yet. That detail would matter more than anyone realized. The Defense Industry Summit was one of those events that looks impressive from the outside and feels like an expensive networking session once you're inside. Glass and steel architecture, red carpet treatment, 180 attendees who spent more energy managing their image than actually discussing defense contracts. Pentagon liaisons, retired generals, established contractors, ambitious newcomers, all orbiting around one company name that had dominated the headlines for weeks. Beckworth Industries. I'd been invited because Thornfield Defense Solutions was about to become their biggest partner. After 18 months of negotiations, presentations, and Pentagon reviews, we were finally ready to close the largest defense modernization contract in Beckworth history. The paperwork was signed, the press releases were drafted. Raymond Beckworth had already given interviews to Defense Weekly about entering a new era of growth and innovation. But here's what most people in that room didn't understand about defense contracting. Signatures on paper aren't the same as money in motion. Until I made one specific phone call and said one specific word, that $875 million was still sitting in Thornfield's accounts, waiting. I don't make that call remotely. I don't make it early. And I sure as hell don't make it until I've seen enough to know exactly what kind of leadership I'm funding. 24 years in the Marines teaches you to read people under pressure. Not what they say in prepared remarks or how they handle scripted presentations. Anyone can look competent when the teleprompter's running. You watch what they do when they think the outcome's already decided, when they believe they have all the leverage, when they assume nobody important is watching. That's when you see who they really are. I'd been at the summit for maybe 45 minutes. Same dress blues I'd worn to these events for 12 years running my company. Geist credential hanging from a lanyard, no entourage, no handlers, just me and a contract that was going to make Beckworth Industries very wealthy. I was standing near the coffee station, reviewing my notes for tomorrow's final presentation, when Austin Beckworth decided to change everything. Austin Beckworth, 28 years old, Vice President of Operations, Raymond's only son. The kind of guy who learned what authority looked like before he ever learned what authority cost. He had that particular walk you see in second-generation executives. Confident without having earned it yet. Entitled in a way that comes from never being told no in any room your family owns. He approached the coffee station where I was standing, and I could see him sizing me up before he said a word. The way he looked at my guest credential, then at my uniform, then back at my name tag, like he was running some kind of mental calculation about who belonged where in his hierarchy. I'd seen that look before, usually right before somebody made a decision they'd regret. "Excuse me," he said, reaching past me for a coffee cup. But instead of taking the cup, his glass of bourbon, premium stuff, probably 18-year-old single malt, came down in a slow, deliberate pour across the front of my dress blues. The liquid hit the fabric and spread immediately. Dark amber stain across the ribbons I'd earned in Iraq and Afghanistan. Bourbon dripping off medals that represented 6 tours overseas and 2 Purple Hearts. The smell hit me next, that sharp alcohol scent mixing with the fabric conditioner I'd used on my uniform that morning. Professional dry cleaning, pressed and starched the way Marines do things. Now ruined by a 28-year-old who thought he was making some kind of point. "Oh, my bad," Austin said, not looking sorry at all. "Guess you should watch where you're standing when important people are trying to get coffee." He grabbed a handful of napkins from the dispenser and held them out to me here. "Clean yourself up." The conversation around us stopped. Maybe 15 people in earshot, all suddenly very interested in their phones or their conversations or anywhere else they could look without getting involved. That particular kind of silence you get when someone crosses a line and everybody knows it, but nobody wants to be the one to say something. I took the napkins, started dabbing at the stain, not because I thought it would help, but because it gave me time to think. In the Marines, we had protocols for situations like this. Clear chains of command, established responses to disrespect, ways to handle conflicts that maintained unit cohesion. In civilian business, especially when you're holding $875 million worth of someone else's future, the protocols are different, more nuanced, more permanent. "Austin," I said, looking at his name tag to make sure I got it right. That's an expensive mistake you just made. He laughed, actually laughed. Expensive. It's bourbon, not gold. Send me the dry cleaning bill. Better yet, send it to my assistant. Patricia can handle the small stuff. That's when I knew exactly what kind of leader Austin Beckworth was going to be, and more importantly, what kind of leader his father Raymond was raising to take over Beckworth Industries, the kind who thought money could clean up any mess, the kind who believed rank came from family names instead of earned respect, the kind who had never learned that some mistakes can't be fixed with a check. I pulled out my phone, not to call my assistant or my lawyer or anyone Austin might expect. I called my operations manager back at Thornfield Defense Solutions. Sandra, it's Mac. I need you to pull up the Beckworth contract. Section 12.7. The Conduct Integrity Clause. I kept my voice level. Professional. Austin was still standing there, probably thinking I was calling someone to complain about his dry cleaning bill. Read me the exact language. Austin rolled his eyes and started to walk away, but something in my tone must have registered because he slowed down, listening. Sandra's voice came through the phone clearly. Section 12.7 states that Thornfield Defense Solutions reserves the right to terminate this agreement immediately upon observing conduct by Beckworth Industries personnel that demonstrates lack of professional integrity, respect for military service, or character deficiencies that would compromise operational security or partnership effectiveness. Thank you. Activate Section 12.7 effective immediately. Send the termination notice to Raymond Beckworth, their legal team, and copy our Pentagon liaison. Also notify our banking partners to freeze any pending transfers. I hung up and looked directly at Austin. His expression had changed. The smug confidence was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Confusion. Maybe the first hint that he'd miscalculated something important. What was that about? He asked. That was me exercising the contract clause your legal team agreed to 6 months ago. The one that gives me unilateral termination rights based on character assessment of key personnel. You just cost your family company $875 million. Austin's face went pale. You're joking. I don't joke about business, Austin, especially not about business that involves military contracts and national security. Your behavior just demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment failure that could compromise classified information or endanger service members. That's not someone Thornfield Defense Solutions can partner with. The people around us weren't pretending not to listen anymore. Word was already spreading through the room. Defense industry events are small worlds where information travels fast. By the time Austin processed what had just happened, at least 30 people knew that Beckworth Industries had just lost the biggest contract in their company's history. Austin's hands were shaking. Now wait, let me get my father. This is just a misunderstanding. I was having a bad day. The bourbon thing was an accident. The bourbon might have been an accident, Austin. Your response wasn't. When you told me to clean myself up and send the bill to your assistant, that showed me exactly who you are. And more importantly, it showed me who your father is raising to eventually run this company. That's when Raymond Beckworth appeared. Raymond was 58 years old, built like someone who'd spent years lifting weights but had gone soft around the middle. He had that particular look of a man who'd built something significant and was now watching his son potentially destroy it. 3 other executives trailed behind him, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marshall, what's going on here? Austin said there was some kind of problem. I gestured to my stained uniform. Your son poured bourbon on my dress blues, then told me to clean myself up and send him the dry cleaning bill. He called it an expensive mistake. He was right about that part. Raymond's jaw tightened as he looked at Austin, then at the stain across my uniform. You could see him running calculations, trying to figure out how to fix whatever his son had broken. Marshall, I'm sure we can work this out. Austin, apologize to Mr. Thornfield right now, Dad. I already offered to pay for dry cleaning. It's not like Austin apologize now. Austin looked around the room, probably noticing for the first time that everyone was watching, that his voice had gotten loud enough to draw attention from across the conference area. Look, I'm sorry if you took offense. I was just trying to get some coffee and stop. I said, don't make this worse than it already is. Raymond stepped forward. Marshall, Austin's young. He made a mistake. But we've been working on this partnership for 18 months. Surely we can move past one incident. Raymond, in the Marines, we have a saying. Character is what you do when you think nobody important is watching. Your son thought I was nobody important. He saw a guy in a military uniform with a guest badge and decided I was someone he could disrespect without consequences. That tells me everything I need to know about his character. And yours. Mine. I wasn't even here when this happened. No, but you raised him. You've been grooming him to take over your company. This is the leadership judgment you're preparing to put in charge of defense contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Contracts that affect the safety of American service members overseas. I could see Raymond processing this, understanding that this wasn't about hurt feelings or military pride. This was about business judgment and risk assessment. The kind of calculations that kept defense contractors awake at night. What can I do to fix this, Marshal? Name your terms. There are no terms, Raymond. Section 12.7 has been activated. The contract is terminated. Thornfield Defense Solutions will be taking our business elsewhere. Austin finally seemed to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. $875 million. You're canceling $875 million over spilled bourbon. I'm canceling $875 million because you demonstrated that when you think you have power over someone, you use it to humiliate them. That's not leadership, Austin. That's bullying, and I don't do business with bullies. Raymond's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Marshal, please. Think about this carefully. This contract represents 40% of our annual revenue. We have 600 employees who depend on this company. You're destroying livelihoods over one incident. No, Raymond, your son destroyed those livelihoods when he decided my respect wasn't worth maintaining. I'm just the messenger. The room had gone completely quiet now. Even the background music from the event speakers seemed muted. This was the kind of moment that would be talked about in defense industry circles for years. The day Raymond Beckworth's son cost the family company nearly $1 billion with one glass of bourbon. I pulled out my wallet and placed a $20 bill on the coffee station table. For the bourbon, I said to Austin, consider us even on the small stuff. Then I walked toward the exit, bourbon still staining my dress blues, leaving Raymond Beckworth standing with his son in a room full of people who had just witnessed the most expensive temper tantrum in defense contracting history. I made it to the parking garage before my phone started ringing. Sandra from my office, then my Pentagon liaison, then 2 different defense industry reporters who somehow already had the story. Word travels fast when $875 million disappears from someone's balance sheet in under 10 minutes. I ignored all of them and drove straight home to Evanston. 45-minute drive through Chicago traffic gave me time to think about what I'd just done. 18 months of work, dozens of meetings, hundreds of pages of contracts and specifications, all gone because a 28-year-old couldn't show basic respect to someone in uniform. But that's the thing about integrity. It's only worth something if you're willing to lose everything else to keep it. My house is a 1920s Craftsman that I bought after my divorce 8 years ago. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. The mortgage is paid off, the lawn stays green, and there's a garage workshop where I restore old military vehicles as a hobby. I've got a 1952 Willys M38 that I've been working on for 3 years. Same model we used in Korea, before my time, but close enough to what I grew up hearing about from my grandfather. I changed out of my dress blues and hung them up for dry cleaning, though I doubted the bourbon stain would come out completely. Some marks are permanent. Then I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and started returning phone calls. Sandra first. Mac, the Pentagon is asking questions. Colonel Morrison wants to know if this affects any other contracts. Tell Morrison it's an isolated incident. Beckworth specific. We're still solid on the other partnerships. What about the press? Defense Weekly has been calling every 10 minutes, no comment for now. Let me think about how to handle this properly. Next call was to my lawyer, Patricia Wells. We'd worked together for 12 years, ever since I started Thornfield Defense Solutions. Patricia had reviewed every major contract, including the specific language in Section 12.7 that I just used to terminate Beckworth. Mac, I've been getting calls. Beckworth's legal team is claiming bad faith termination. They want to challenge the conduct clause. Can they, theoretically? Yes. But they'd have to prove that Austin's behavior didn't constitute the kind of character deficiency the clause was designed to address. Good luck with that, especially with 30 witnesses. What's my exposure? Minimal. The clause was their idea originally. They wanted protection against employee misconduct on our side that might compromise security clearances. We just negotiated reciprocal language. They signed off on it 6 months ago after their own legal review. That was good news. Patricia's voice had that calm tone she used when she knew we were on solid legal ground, but there was something else in her tone too. What aren't you telling me, Patricia? Beckworth Industries stock is down 13% in after-hours trading. Word is already out that they lost their biggest contract. Raymond's probably going to face some serious board pressure. I hadn't thought about the stock implications. When you cancel an $875 million contract, it's not just about that money. It's about what that contract represents for future growth, market confidence, investor expectations. Beckworth Industries had built their entire growth strategy around defense modernization contracts. Without Thornfield's partnership, they'd have to completely restructure their business model. That's not my problem, Patricia. They created this situation. I know. I'm just making sure you understand the full impact. This isn't just about Austin anymore. This is about Raymond's entire company. After Patricia, I called my operations team to discuss next steps. Thornfield Defense Solutions had been planning to use the Beckworth partnership as a foundation for expanding into 3 new market segments. Without that $875 million in guaranteed revenue, we'd need to recalibrate our growth projections and start looking for alternative partners. But here's the thing about running a successful defense contracting company. Reputation matters more than any single contract. Word was already spreading through Pentagon circles about what had happened at the summit. Not the financial details, those would stay confidential for now, but the basic story. Austin Beckworth disrespected a Marine veteran at an industry event, and Marshal Thornfield walked away from the biggest deal of his career rather than work with people who couldn't show basic respect for military service. That story would reach the right people, the Pentagon officials who make decisions about which contractors get invited to bid on major projects, the retired generals who serve on defense industry boards and influence partnership recommendations, the other Marine veterans who run companies throughout the defense supply chain. By evening, I had 6 different companies reaching out about potential partnerships. 3 of them were competitors who'd been trying to break into Beckworth's market share for years. The other 3 were established players who'd heard about Thornfield's reputation for integrity and wanted to explore collaboration opportunities. The most interesting call came from General Patricia Hoffman, retired Marine Corps and current board chair for Meridian Defense Systems. Patricia and I had served together in Iraq during my 2nd deployment. She knew my work, knew my character, and knew exactly what it meant when I walked away from $875 million on principle. Mac, I heard about what happened today. That took guts. Just good business, General. Can't partner with people you can't trust. That's exactly why I'm calling. Meridian has been looking for a strategic partner for our new logistics modernization program, $1.2 billion over 4 years. We need someone who understands that integrity isn't negotiable, even when the money's good. I paused, processing what she was telling me. Meridian Defense Systems was one of the top 5 defense contractors in the country. A partnership with them wouldn't just replace the Beckworth deal, it would eclipse it completely. When can we talk specifics? Tomorrow morning. Can you be in Washington by 10 a.m.? I'll be there. After Patricia hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a while thinking about how quickly things can change. This morning, I'd been planning to finalize the biggest contract in Thornfield's history with Beckworth Industries. Tonight, I was looking at a potential partnership worth $400 million more with a company that had built its reputation on the same values that made me walk away from Austin Beckworth's Bourbon. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mr. Thornfield, this is Raymond Beckworth. Austin would like to apologize in person. Can we meet tomorrow to discuss salvaging our partnership? I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges burn completely, and all the apologies in the world can't rebuild them. Austin Beckworth had shown me his character when he thought it didn't matter. Now he was learning that character always matters, especially when you're managing other people's money and other people's trust. The next morning's financial news would report that Beckworth Industries stock had dropped 18% overnight, that the company was facing difficult questions from investors about their leadership transition plan, and that industry analysts were downgrading their growth projections for the next 2 years. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I had a meeting in Washington with people who understood that some things matter more than money. The meeting in Washington went exactly as I'd hoped. General Patricia Hoffman introduced me to Meridian's executive team, and by noon we had a handshake agreement on a 4-year partnership worth $1.2 billion. More money than Beckworth, better timeline, and most importantly, working with people who understood that character matters more than quarterly earnings. The contract signing was scheduled for the following week, but Patricia wanted to discuss something else first. Mac, what you did yesterday is going to be talked about in defense circles for years. Walking away from that much money on principle that sends a message about what kind of leader you are. It wasn't about sending a message, General. It was about not compromising my values for money. That's exactly my point. Meridian needs that kind of leadership thinking for our board of advisors. We're not just offering you a partnership contract. We want you to consider joining our strategic oversight committee. $200,000 annual retainer, quarterly meetings in Washington, input on major contract decisions. I'd been in business long enough to recognize a career-defining moment. Board positions with companies like Meridian don't come up often, and when they do, they usually go to retired generals with Pentagon connections or former defense secretaries with political influence. They don't typically go to guys who run mid-size contracting companies from suburban Chicago. What's the commitment? 4 quarterly meetings per year, plus availability for consultation on major decisions. We value your operational experience and your integrity. Both are rare in this industry. I accepted on the spot. By Thursday of that week, news of the Meridian partnership had reached Defense Weekly, along with confirmation that I'd been named to their Strategic Oversight Committee. The article mentioned the Beckworth situation briefly, noting that Thornfield Defense Solutions had elected not to proceed with a previously announced partnership due to cultural fit concerns. Raymond Beckworth called me personally that afternoon. "Marshall, I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Austin wants to make this right. He's prepared to issue a public apology, and I'm willing to restructure his role in the company. He won't be involved in client relations going forward. Raymond, I appreciate the call, but the Meridian partnership is already signed. We've moved on. Meridian, you're working with Patricia Hoffman now. $1.2 billion over 4 years, plus a board position. Sometimes the best business decisions look like the most expensive ones at first." There was a long pause on the phone. Raymond was probably doing the math, realizing that his son's bourbon had cost the family company not just $875 million, but the chance to compete for an even larger contract with better terms. "Marshall, can I ask you something? If Austin had handled that situation differently, if he'd apologized immediately and shown genuine respect, would we still have had a partnership? Honestly, probably. I came to that summit ready to close the deal with you. But character assessments work both ways, Raymond. I needed to see how your company handles mistakes and pressure. Austin showed me exactly how he handles both. He's young, he can learn, maybe he can. But I couldn't risk $875 million on maybe. In the defense business, character failures get people killed. Better to find out now than later." That conversation ended cordially, but it was clear that Raymond understood the full scope of what his son had cost the company. Within 6 months, Beckworth Industries had laid off 180 employees and canceled 2 major expansion projects. Austin was quietly reassigned to an advisory role with no client contact. Raymond brought in an outside CEO to run day-to-day operations while he focused on damage control with investors. Meanwhile, Thornfield Defense Solutions was hiring. The Meridian partnership required us to expand our operations team by 40%, and my board position was opening doors to other partnerships throughout the defense supply chain. We moved to larger offices in downtown Chicago, hired 25 new employees, and started development on 3 new product lines. The bourbon stain never did come out of my dress blues completely. There's still a faint amber mark across the ribbons, barely visible unless you know where to look. I kept wearing that uniform to industry events for the next 2 years until I finally retired it to the closet and bought a new one. But I never forgot what that stain represented. The moment when doing the right thing turned out to be the most profitable decision I'd ever made. 18 months later, Austin Beckworth was arrested for insider trading. Apparently, using company information for personal stock trades was just another example of his character in action. Raymond Beckworth resigned from the company board the following week. Beckworth Industries was acquired by a European defense conglomerate 6 months after that, primarily for their intellectual property and manufacturing facilities. Most of the original leadership team was replaced. I ran into Patricia Hoffman at the Pentagon Memorial Day ceremony that spring. She mentioned that Meridian was considering another major partnership expansion, potentially worth $2 billion over 6 years, and wanted to discuss Thornfield's capacity for managing larger-scale operations. "Mac, I've been thinking about that day when you walked away from Beckworth. You knew something the rest of us didn't. What's that? That integrity isn't just about doing the right thing when it's convenient. It's about doing the right thing when it costs you everything, because that's when it's worth the most." She was right. The most expensive decisions often turn out to be the most valuable ones, but only if you're willing to pay the price up front instead of financing the payments over time. If you're reading this and you've spent decades building something, a company, a reputation, a career, only to watch someone younger and less experienced treat your work like it doesn't matter, remember this. Respect isn't given based on family names or job titles. It's earned through character and competence. When someone shows you who they really are through how they treat people they think don't matter, believe them the first time. Every handshake agreement, every signed contract, every business partnership is really a character assessment. You're not just betting money on their company, you're betting your reputation on their integrity. The people who built things don't need permission to be valued. They need the courage to walk away from anyone who thinks their respect is optional, because the moment you stand up and move toward people who recognize your worth, everyone else finally understands exactly what they lost. Stop negotiating with people who've already decided what you're worth. Start partnering with people who know what integrity costs and are willing to pay that price every single day.